applies. Even the bricks and pillars is apricot and non-different from Krishna. What should we read from? This is Prabhupada writing. There are at least 300 big cities in your country, and if we can appoint one selling agent only in each city, consuming an average of 100 copies only, the total quantity comes to 30,000 copies. This is not a utopian idea. It is completely practical. Simply, we have to arrange and organize. So expecting on this calculation that in the near future we shall be able to distribute at least 30,000 copies of Back to Godhead, you can immediately take quotations from Dai Nippon for regular 20,000 copies minimum per month. Jai. So Prabhupada's Transcendental Book Distribution Key. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 7, Chapter 4, entitled Hiranyakashipu Terrorizes the Universe. Text 38. 38? Ashina Paritanashnan Shayana Pravipan Pravan Nanu Sandat Etani Govinda Parirambita Ashina Paritanashnan Shayana Pravipan Pravan Nanu Sandat Etani Govinda Parirambita Ashnina Paritanashnan Shayana Pravipan Pravan Anusandate Etani Govinda Parirambita Ashina while sitting, Paryatan while walking, Ashnan while eating, Shayanaha while lying down, Prapiban while drinking, Bruvan while talking, Na not, Anusandate new, Etani all these activities, Govinda by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who enlivens the senses, Parirambitaha, being embraced. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada ki. Prahlad Maharaj was always absorbed in thought of Krishna. Thus, being always embraced by the Lord, he did not know how his bodily necessities, such as sitting, walking, eating, lying down, drinking, and talking, were being automatically performed. Please respond. Prahlad Maharaj was always absorbed in thought of Krishna. Thus, being always embraced by the Lord, he did not know how his bodily necessities, such as sitting, walking, eating, lying down, drinking, and talking, were being automatically performed. Purport. A small child, while being cared for by his mother, does not know how the needs of the body for eating, sleeping, lying down, passing water, and evacuating are being fulfilled. He is simply satisfied to be in the lap of his mother. Similarly, Prahlad Maharaj was exactly like a small child, being cared for by Govinda. The necessary activities of his body were performed without his knowledge. As a father and a mother care for their child, Govinda cared for Prahlad Maharaj, who remained always absorbed in thoughts of Govinda. This is Krishna consciousness. Prahlad Maharaj is a vivid example of perfection in Krishna consciousness. Om Jnanatamrandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Gadamayam Dadanti Swapadantikam Vandeyam Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagajatam Sagana Raganatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Ladita Shri Vishakam Vitamsta He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Tino Bando Trigatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gorangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sutadevi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanshakalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Panepacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shiva Sari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, dear devotees. It's a very, very nice verse today. So kindly asking the blessings and the well wishes of all the assembled Vaishnavas, because we're simply made of the mercy of the Vaishnavas. Simply made of their mercy. So here we're continuing the glorification of Prahlad Maharaj. Bhagavatam is dealing with the activities of Krishna and his devotees. And you'll find that the majority of the Bhagavatam is dealing with Krishna's devotees. And also the glorification of the pure devotees of the Lord is none different from glorification of the Lord, because these pure devotees, they described actually when you have a diamond is nice and you have gold is nice. But what is nicer is if you set that diamond in a gold ring, then both the items themselves are made more beautiful. So similarly, Krishna surrounded by his devotees is like a diamond set in a gold ring. So Prahlad Maharaj, he is one of the most exalted devotees that are given descriptions in the Bhagavatam. And this purport here very much sums up Krishna consciousness, because Krishna consciousness is reciprocal. The essence of Krishna consciousness is understanding our identity, that we are we're not here in this material world simply for our own enjoyment, but we constitutionally exist as an eternal servant of Krishna. Jivara Swaparhoy Krishnera Nityadas. That our eternal nature is not something that we can choose or something that we might like to do, that the only thing we can actually do, the only thing we exist to be, is a servant of Krishna. And right now we're trying to pretend that we're not, and therefore we have to suffer so many different material tribulations. Ultimately, we cannot help but serve. Our nature is to serve, therefore we serve the material external energy. People they'll serve their family, they'll serve their nation, they'll serve their boss at work. Or if they don't want to do any of these things, then they'll get some animal at home and they'll serve that. You see people walking around with a dog and they have to pick up the stool off the dog's past stool and everything. They become servants. We cannot help but serve, but only when we're actually serving the Supreme Lord or the representatives of the Supreme Lord, then can we be satisfied in that service. Otherwise, there's no reciprocation. So we see here the main point of this purport is the reciprocation that Krishna is exhibiting towards Prahlad Maharaj. It says, as a father and mother cared for their child, Govinda cared for Prahlad Maharaj, who remained always absorbed in thoughts of Govinda. So this is a reciprocation. Prahlad Maharaj, he is perfectly Krishna consciousness. It says Prahlad Maharaj is a vivid example of perfection in Krishna consciousness. So what is Krishna consciousness? Actually, maybe devotees, they could suggest, what do we mean by Krishna consciousness? We hear it many times, but if you were to say in maximum 3 words, what is Krishna consciousness?
Conscious of Krishna.
Absorption. Yeah. And I just want to shout something out. What comes to mind? Service. Yeah, ultimately the goal of Krishna consciousness is, we're listening to one Prabhupada class recently, and Prabhupada says to be Krishna conscious to have a sense of Krishna. Just the perfection of life is simply to, just by thinking of Krishna, then we're with Krishna. And this is why we place so much emphasis on chanting his names, because this is the way that we become Krishna conscious. And Krishna, he states in the Bhagavad Gita, Madgita prana bodayantas parasparam katayantas chamams nitya tushanti cha ramanti cha, that the thoughts of my pure devotees always dwell in me. It says that the thoughts of my pure devotees always dwell in me. Their lives are completely dedicated towards my service, and they always get great pleasure and delight from discussing about me. This is one of the seed verses, the Chaturshloki from the Srimad Bhagavad Gita. It's very interesting that for those who are completely absorbed in thoughts of Krishna, then Krishna is completely absorbed in thoughts of them. And this relationship becomes one of interdependence. Now we may feel like, why should we, like here, Prahlad Maharaj is completely dependent upon Krishna. And you may feel like, why is Prahlad Maharaj making Krishna having to act for this way, for his own maintenance and things? But ultimately, everything is being maintained. Every single living being is being maintained by Krishna. Now, it may be an external thing, but also, if we actually properly take shelter of Krishna, become Krishna conscious, Krishna derives great pleasure from caring for us in this way. Just like the example here is of the father caring for the child. The father, naturally, if the child comes to the father, a small child may come to the father with some problems, and the father will actually derive some pleasure from being able to serve the child in that way. This is natural relationship. to feel that you're being able to protect someone is actually is a particular rasa. So Krishna also likes to feel this. He's known as Bhakta Vatsala. So there's one nice pastime from the Mahabharata which exemplifies this. After the Battle of Kurukshetra, and Yudhishthira Maharaj has been enthroned, etc. Then Bhishma Dev is still lying on the battlefield in a bed of arrows. And so Krishna's in Hastinapur with the Pandavas, and Yudhishthira Maharaj goes to see him. He knocks on the door and he comes in, and he sees that Krishna is sitting there on some sort of couch, deeply absorbed in meditation. He tries to say, excuse me, and he doesn't hear any response. You can see Krishna is very deeply absorbed in samadhi. He thinks, how incredible is this? The Supreme Personality of Godhead, the source of everything, is deeply absorbed in meditation. Must be absorbed in meditation upon himself. This is mind-blowing. And so he's confused, and he inquires from Krishna, so, what are you deeply absorbed in meditation of? And he says, my dear devotee Bhishma Dev, this is Krishna speaking, he says, my dear devotee Bhishma Dev, he is lying on a bed of arrows, and he's like a dwindling flame. He says, like, because he's very much near the end of his life, a dwindling flame, and he is completely absorbed in thoughts of me, and therefore I cannot help but be completely absorbed in thoughts of him. And then he goes on to describe how Bhishma Dev fought so valiantly against him, all these different qualities of Bhishma Dev. And then he says, then we shall go and we shall hear him speak on Dharma, because he knows things which even I do not know about Dharma. And so this epitomizes Krishna consciousness. It's a two-way relationship. We become conscious of Krishna, and Krishna becomes conscious of us. Krishna is already conscious of us, but still it's a relationship. Like, you imagine a relationship between, a man and a woman. Like a husband and wife, they may know each other, but still constantly you have to conquer the other person. You have to, again, make your love known. And in this way, Krishna consciousness, the more we serve, the more we give, the more we surrender in this process of trying to please Krishna, the more he reveals himself to us. Bhakti mama vijanati yavam yash tashmi tatvataha tatoman tatvato gyattar vishate tadanantaram. That by this process of devotional service, Krishna reveals himself to us. And the more we know about Krishna, then naturally the more we want to serve. Like Krishna consciousness at the beginning, you don't bring people to the temple and tell them, okay, now you can serve, you can do this service, this service, this service. Not really. So much you just tell them about Krishna. And okay, you do a little bit of service, but the more people they hear about Krishna, they chant his names, then naturally the natural result of hearing about Krishna is that you want to serve. Shunvata swagata Krishna punya shravana kirtana hridyanta soyavidrani vidanote suhitstatam. That Krishna's in the heart, and as soon as he is aware, as soon as he notices that we've got the slightest inclination to hear about him, then from within the heart he begins his purification process. He's situated in the heart and he's purifying us, because it's our natural constitution to serve. And it's covered over right now. We're serving the external energy. But as soon as we begin to hear about Krishna, we glorify him, then naturally the service is the result. So service is the means, service gives us a taste, and service is the result. And therefore, chanting itself is the highest service. Chanting is the highest service. So the more we hear about Krishna, then the more we want to serve, and the more we serve, then the more Krishna reveals himself to us. Therefore, the more we fall in love with him, therefore the more we want to serve. This is Anandam Buddhivardhanam, an ever-increasing ocean of bliss. This is great. This is Krishna's relationship, ultimately with Srimad Radharani. It's like this, that the more qualities. It's great. Krishna came in the form of Mahaprabhu so that he could understand the bliss that Srimad Radharani was feeling from serving Krishna, so that he could see Krishna in the way that she saw him, because he could not see himself through her eyes. He could only see himself personally. He wanted to experience himself through her eyes. And every time she sees some new quality, then she falls in love with Krishna more, and then Krishna, because of that love, he then reveals a new quality. And this is a transcendental competition. A transcendental competition. So it's Anandam Buddhi Vardhanam. This ocean of bliss is ever increasing. It's fathomless. And it keeps going and it keeps going. And it's, the perfection of life. So the activities we perform in devotional service, Krishna, we have to understand that Krishna is on our side. That whatever material advancement we make is temporary gain. Therefore, it's basically meaningless. No matter how intelligent, how advanced, how good looking, how high status in society you get, all this is temporary and will be taken away. And Krishna doesn't really desire us to have it very much. If we want it, he will facilitate, but he doesn't want us to have it. But whatever spiritual advancement we make, he's very, very keen for us to keep. He's very much on our side. He sees we're making the slightest endeavor, then he facilitates with so many means to clear the path for us. And actually, devotees often notice when you actually start to practice the process of devotional service, you realize how many experiences that previously happened in your life have actually been preparation for being able to actually engage properly in devotional service. It may not be so apparent straight away. We may feel we have many hindrances, etc., but we have to understand that actually Krishna, for the normal conditioned soul, Krishna is not personally present. They are being basically under the influence of the external energy. It's still Krishna, but Krishna is not so much there. But when one's actually engaged in devotional service, and Krishna personally takes a personal role in that devotee's life, and therefore he uses their karma and their different sinful reactions, he uses it in such a way as to mold them and give them particular lessons to speed up the process of them coming back to him. And so it's described, Neha Bikramanasosti, Prachuvaya Navijite, Swalpamapyasya Dharmasya Trayate Madhobhayat. Whatever advancement we make in spiritual life is a permanent asset. That we make 1% spiritual advancement, we take birth again, we start from that same 1%. It's like a bank account, and this saves us from the greatest type of fear. But it's actually described, it's more than it's just saved there. We do some spiritual, some devotional service. Well, if this is like a bank account, then we have to inquire. Every good bank account, the reason we put our money in there, for two reasons. The money is safe, but also it generates interest. Like this, we put our money in a bank account, so we deposit £100. Now that £100 is kept safe, but more than that, that the bank will then invest that money, it'll generate interest. So by the time we go back in a year's time, there may be £105. Same spiritual life is like this. There's one very nice story. I'm just going to read a little bit. It's from Nectar Devotion. The chapter 21 of Nectar Devotion is listing Krishna's qualities. Very, very nice chapter. I strongly recommend all devotees, if you've not read, to read this. Because ultimately we need to know, we're going to become Krishna conscious, we need to know who Krishna is. We need to know what he's like, how immensely personal he is, how his relationship with his devotees is so attractive. So there's, I don't know how many qualities of Krishna there are. Unlimited, but prominent qualities as enumerated by Rupa Goswami. 64. So I was just going to read number 17. The quality is grateful. Krishna is the Supreme Lord, the source of everything. He's also grateful. So this is another pastime from the Mahabharata as well. Any person who is conscious of his friend's beneficent activities and never forgets his service is called grateful. In the Mahabharata, Krishna says, when I was away from Draupadi and she cried with the words, Hey Govinda, this call for me has put me in her debt. and that indebtedness is gradually increasing in my heart. This statement by Krishna gives evidence of how one can please the Supreme Lord simply by addressing him, Hey Krishna, Hey Govinda. We see that we know the pastime. So Draupadi, she is the wife of the Pandavas, and there's a gambling match, and some or other she gets put in the. She's they gamble all the property of Yudhishthira, gets sort of tricked to gamble all his property, and therefore Draupadi is also lost in this gambling match. And I think it's Dushasana, and I'm not so good with names, but Duryodhana and Dushasana and these different Kauravas, they basically attempt to disrobe Draupadi in the assembly of all these personalities, and she's desperately clinging onto a cloth, onto her sari, and they're trying to disrobe her, and she's calling it to Krishna, but still she's clinging onto her cloth, and so nothing happens as such. And then eventually she realizes she is helpless in this situation, that they're pulling out her cloth. She has very limited strength. The cloth is almost running out, and therefore she fully surrenders. She realizes she's helpless, and she cries out, Hey Govinda. And in this situation, Krishna is described actually, he manifests as her cloth, and he becomes a limited cloth. So they're pulling at it, but her cloth is unlimited. Yeah, it's a very, very beautiful story. But so here Krishna is saying, when Draupadi called out, Hey Govinda, that this call for me has put me in her debt. So Krishna has become indebted to her. And that indebtedness is gradually increasing in my heart. Every time Krishna thinks of it, he becomes more in love with the situation. Every time Krishna thinks of the situation, he develops more love for the devotee. So this is how devotional service is not just like you're putting money into a bank account, it's actually generating interest. That Krishna is so pleased by what service we do. Not that we hold back though, because the more that Krishna is pleased, the more we have to serve. So it goes on to say, the Maha Mantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, is also simply an address to the Lord and his energy. So to anyone who is constantly engaged in addressing the Lord and his energy, we can imagine how much the Supreme Lord is obliged. It is impossible for the Lord to ever forget such a devotee. It is clearly stated in this verse that anyone who addresses the Lord immediately attracts the attention of the Lord, who always remains obliged to him. Very, very powerful. So Prabhupada is here saying that when we're chanting the Maha Mantra, which we try and spend as much time as possible each day doing, the same reciprocation is there as Krishna had with Draupadi. Krishna will protect us, and Krishna actually becomes very endeared by this. And so this process of Krishna consciousness is about it's a relationship. It's a relationship of love, and love is based upon conquering another person. And always we do service. And we don't serve Krishna directly, we serve the devotees. We serve the spiritual master. We serve through the parampara. And this way, we conquer their heart, and then we're in their heart, and they're in Krishna's heart. It's like this. Gadamba Karnamaj, he shared he had one dream. When he was a very young devotee, his spiritual master at that time, he had this dream that his spiritual master didn't know his name. And I said, this didn't feel right. That actually we should, not so much about making ourselves known and prominent, but still we should capture the attention. We should try and capture the heart of the Vaishnava. And this comes through service. And you'll notice yourself, if anyone ever serves you, oftentimes you're living in a temple, then devotees are very, very kind, and they help, or they serve in different ways. and how much actually it melts the heart. So service is everything. Yeah. So this is the glories of Prahlad Maharaj, always absorbed in thought of Krishna, thus being always embraced by the Lord. He did not know how his bodily necessities, such as sitting, walking, eating, lying down, drinking, and talking, were being automatically performed. So all these bodily necessities, they'll take care of themselves, so we're fully absorbed in Krishna consciousness. So perhaps we can stop here if there's any questions or comments so far. Jai Shri Kuntai Mai Pushashi Ki. I will.
But from like what I'm seeing, it does like kind of feels like more of that cellular, you know, like a Franklin David.
Yeah, I've heard there is that parental mood because it's described in Shringadev. You can see that Prahlad Maharaj is getting more pleasure from. Prahlad Maharaj is getting more pleasure from having parents than Nrsingadev is having. Nrsingadev, he sort of took birth from a column. And therefore, it is described that whenever any incarnation of Krishna thereafter always has parents. After Nrsingadev, they always have parents because Krishna likes that particular rasa. And so this mood of Vatsalya is a strong mood of dependence. That you see with Krishna and Mother Yashoda, Krishna becomes dependent on Mother Yashoda. He becomes, he lets himself become helpless. Vasudev's in a prison, and Devaki, and then Krishna appears, and although they can see Krishna in this Narayan form, Vishnu 400, still they get overcome by this Vatsalya mood. Yoga Maya covers him. He thinks, well, I have to protect my baby. Okay, I have to take him to Nandagram, take him to Nanda Maharaj. He's protected there. And Krishna, this mood of dependence is there in Vatsalya Ras. So it's also interesting that here is described Govinda cared for Prahlad Maharaj. There's Govinda. I don't quite know what to particularly make why that name Govinda is used, but Govinda is the supreme personality of Godhead who enlivens the senses. Krishna's names are always in relationship to his devotees, the cows and the senses. But, maybe perhaps some devotees have anything else they'd like to share on that point. But Prahlad Maharaj and his relationship with Nrsingadeva.
You couldn't really be called Vatsalya Ras because generally that Ras means that Krishna becomes dependent on the devotee, not the devotee dependent on Krishna's appearance. So you couldn't really be called Vatsalya Ras. Srila Prabhupada does describe that it is Dashinath because Prahlad Maharaj is completely attached to Krishna, the Supreme Personality of God, who he doesn't see as Nrsingadevi, because Nrsingadevi is manifesting when he comes out of the pillar of his eyes and thinking, well, he's going to come out like Nrsingadevi. Right. He's just thinking that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of God, Govinda. And that's why whatever you just quoted about the name Govinda is that's who Prahlad was serving. Mm-hmm. That's who he was a servant of.
Huh. But we also see that Prahlad Maharaj is still it's described in the Vaikuntha planets. There's a planet of Nrsingadev who's being served by Prahlad Maharaj. There's still that he seems to be constitutionally engaged in that relationship with. Yeah. No, thank you very much, Ruba. So, anyone else like to share anything? Awesome.
I was just thinking about the story of Draupadi and how Krishna didn't, the reason he didn't help her sooner was because she was still trying to control just a tiny bit. She was still holding on, and was thinking just about in life how difficult it is to fully surrender, all the time.
Yeah. And it's like this, the more you surrender, then what do you say? It's like Krishna doesn't reveal all your anarthas at once, because if you saw them all at once, then you probably have to just faint and you give up devotional service. It'd be too much. You sort of just piece by piece, you get shown. Just because this process of Krishna consciousness, Krishna's like the sun, the shining a light in the darkness of of our hearts sometimes, and slowly you begin more apparent of where your attachments are, where your anarthas are, and you work on them. But we have to understand that Krishna's on our side, and when we have faith in the process, then the process gives surrender as a result of the process. And we have to surrender, but we have to also surrender to the holy name. Thank you.
So the analogy that you gave was a good one about, if you had 100 pounds and you put it in the bank, then in a year later you may have 105 pounds. And that's a good analogy as far as rendering devotional service and the benefit that you still have. But if I take 100 pounds and I put it in the bank, I don't really have to do anything. I just have to sit there and wait. So, is that how it is with devotional service? That we perform a little service and then we just sit there and wait until our devotion increases? Or do we have to actually do something for our devotion to increase?
I think so. I mean, in a sense, you perform some service, then just by doing that service, then Krishna becomes pleased with you, and therefore you've got more desire to do more service. The result of service is more service. I also think this analogy, we're not taking into account offences, which can, although it can't diminish that stock that's in the bank, it can freeze our ability to access it. But we should do service because we want to serve. It's not like,
So the service is actually the interest.
yeah, service is the interest. You got to read the terms and conditions. Yeah. Devotees, they look for difficult circumstances simply so they can serve more. But also to understand that service doesn't mean just like pushing your body through, like lifting really heavy things or standing out in the rain for a very long time. Like that's very much a gross manifestation. Service is the attitude, and just trying to please and serve Krishna. So we can, by hearing about Krishna, this is service. By chanting his names, this is service. Whatever it is, simply we cannot offer anything, nothing material that we have. Like we cook food or we build a temple. Whatever it is, itself isn't actually pleasing to Krishna. Krishna doesn't need anything like that. What is the food that we can cook? What is the, all these things that we can supposedly do? But Krishna wants our consciousness. This is what we have. He wants our love. And therefore we have to, if you take on some responsibility, make some endeavor, then it forces you to be dependent upon Krishna, to really give. But it's not that do lots of service means being really, really busy all the time and just being really tired. It's like, that's not quite what it means to take on more service. It's like being absorbed is service. Giving your whole life and making sure that you've perfected your life so at the time of death you're thinking of Krishna. This is service. Offering arti, anyone can do. He said, well, I've done 10 artis today. You know, I've done 20 artis. He's like, that's not service. If you do one arti, we do it with love and devotion. That's actually service. Yeah. I was trying to realize this myself.
I'll describe it as that when we're rendering our service, it should be with attachment. That's the word we use. That we're attached to pleasing Krishna and complete attachment to what we're doing and why we're doing it. Not just going through the motions. I mean, we can render service and not be attached, and it can still be called service, but in order to call it devotional service, the attachment has to be there.
Yeah. Not attachment for the result. Yeah. Okay. Thank you kindly for those. Grantra Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Sri Prabhupada ki, Nitai Gaur Premanandi. Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki.